World of Warcraft Rise of the Horde by Christy Golding. Chapter 8. How easily the mind can be turned to hate from a place of fear. An incentive nature, protective response. Instead of focusing on the things that unite us, we focus on what divides us. My skin is green, yours is pink. I have tusks, you have long ears. My skin is bare, yours is covered with fur. I breathe air, you do not. If we had clung to such things, the Burning Legion If we had clung to such things, the Burning Legion would not have been defeated, for I would never have wished to ally with Jaina Proudmoore, or fight alongside elves. My people would then not have survived to befriend the Tauren, or the Forsaken. So it was with the Draenei. Our skin was reddish-brown then, theirs was blue. We had feet, they had hooves, and a tail. We lived mostly in the open. They lived in enclosed spaces. We had a fairly short lifespan. No one knew how long-lived they were. Never mind that they had shown us nothing but courtesy and openness, that they had traded with us, taught us, shared whatever they were asked to share. That had no bearing now. We had heard from the ancestors, and we saw with our own eyes how different they were. My prayer every day is for wisdom to guide my people. And in that prayer is coached in plea, never to be blinded by such trivial differences. The training began. It had always been custom among nearly every clan to begin training the younglings once they celebrated their 6th year. But previously, the training had been serious but relaxed. Weapons were for hunting animals, not sentient beings who had their own weapons and skills and technological advantages. And there were plenty of hunters who could easily bring down prey. A young orc learned at his or her own pace, and there was plenty of time for play and enjoying simply being young. No longer. The plea for unity among the orcs was answered. The couriers exhausted their beasts riding to and fro between clans carrying messages. At one point, some bright fellow came up with the idea of training bloodhawks to carry the letters. It took some doing and did not happen overnight, but gradually, Durtan grew used to seeing the scarlet birds fluttering to Drekthar and others in the clan. He approved of the idea. Every warm body was needed if battle plans were to be successful. While spears, arrows, axes, and other weapons worked well against animals of the fields and forest, they would need to be supplemented with other types of weapons if they were to be used against the Draenei. Protection would be vital, and whereas before the smiths and leathercrafts focused on armor that would blunt attacks from claws and teeth, now they had to create things that would save the wearer if he were impaled or slashed by a sword. Those who understood the craft of smithing had been few previously. Now, the masters found themselves teaching dozens at a time. The forges rang day and night with the sound of hammers and the hissing of hot metal being plunged into water barrels. Many spent long days swinging picks, forcing the earth to yield necessary materials for crafting weapons and metal armor. Hunts, which had been conducted as the need arose, now were daily events, as food needed to be dried and preserved and skins required for armor. The younglings who lined up for training looked very young indeed to Duratan, who was one of the many instructors. He recalled his father teaching him the way of the axe and spear. What would he think of these small ones? All that buckling beneath shiny metal armor, holding weapons that no orc had ever before borne. Draka, with whom he had joined in a quick, quiet ritual, as he did not want to take time or resources away from war training, touched his back gently. Always she knew what he was thinking. It would be better if we had been born at a time of peace, she agreed. Even the most bloodthirsty knows the truth of that. But we are where we are, my mates, and I know you will not shrink this task. He smiled sadly at her. Nay, I will not. We are warriors. We thrive on the hunt, on the challenge, on the spilling of blood and cries of victory. They are small, but they are not weak. They will learn. They are frost wolves. He paused, and fiercely added, They are orcs. Time is passing, said Rokan. I know. But you would not have our people go into battle unprepared, Nerzul replied. The Draenei are vast and superior as it stands now. Rokan grunted unhappily, then smiled. Nerzul looked at her. Was it his imagination, or did that smile seem forced? We are training as fast as we can, Nerzul added, quickly, not wishing to offend the spirit who had been his life mate. Rokan was silent. Clearly it was not fast enough. Perhaps you can help us, he said. He was aware that he was babbling. Perhaps there is knowledge that you have that... Rokan frowned. She then cocked her head. I have told you all I know, she said. But there are other powers, other beings, that the living do not know of. Nerzul almost stumbled at her words. There are the elements, and there are ancestral spirits, he managed. What other beings are there? She smiled at him. You yet breathe, my mates. You are not ready to treat with them. They are the ones who have been aiding us so that we may aid you. The beloved ones we left behind. No! Nerzul realized he was pleading, but he could not help it. Please, we need aid if we are to protect future generations from the Draenei insidious plots. He did not say that he was enjoying being the center of attention from every single orc in every single clan. He did not say that her earlier promise of power had made him think on such things, and began to desire them. But even more than that, she had installed such terror of the monstrous Draenei that this sudden holding back on her part unnerved him totally. Rokan looked at him appraisingly. Perhaps you are right, she said. I will see if they will speak to you. There is one whom I trust the most, whose concern for our people is deep and abiding. I will ask him. He nodded, almost ridiculously pleased at her words, then blinked awake. A smile stretched his lips. Soon he would see the mysterious spirit, this benefactor, very soon. Gul'dan smiled at him as he brought in fruit and fish to break the master's fast. Another vision, my master? He bowed low as he presented the food and cup of steaming herbal tea. Upon Rokan's advice, Nerzul had begun drinking the tincture of certain herbs brewed to precise strength. Rokan assured him that it would continue to ensure that his mind and spirit remained open to visions. Nerzul had found the concoction unpleasant at first, but had showed no signs of dislike. Now he found he enjoyed the beverage, first thing in the morning and 3 more times throughout the day. He accepted the cup and sipped it as he nodded in response to Gul'dan's question. Indeed, I have learned something important. Gul'dan, for as long as there have been orcs, there have been shaman, Shaman work with the elements and with the ancestors. Gul'dan's face wore an expression of puzzlement. Yes, of course. Nazul couldn't stifle a grin that stretched his lips wide over his tusks. And that is still true. But there is more than we know of. More than the ancestors can see, but we as living beings cannot. Rokan has told Rokan has told me she has been in contact with such beings. They have wisdom and knowledge even beyond that of the ancestors, and they will come to aid us. To aid us! Rokan says there is one particular one who has chosen to take the orcs under his wing. And soon he will show himself to me. Gul'dan's eyes sparkled. And to me too? Perhaps, master? Gul'dan smiled. You are a strong one, Gul'dan, he said. I would not have chosen you as my apprentice if that were not the case. Yes, I think so. When he has deemed you worthy as he has deemed me. Gul'dan lowered his head. May it be so, he said. I am so honored to serve. This is a time of great glory for the orcs. We are blessed to see it. The Blackrock clan, the Black Hand himself, in the vanguard, had begged for the honor of being the first to strike. There had been some resentment and grumbling, but the hunting skills of the Blackrock were legendary, and they were logically first choice, as they had also lived fairly near Telmore, one of the smaller, more isolated cities. They had been given the first efforts at armor, swords, metal-tipped arrows, and other weapons of war that would bring down the Draenei. Orgrim, the Doomhammer strapped across his back and clad from head to foot in metal that made him chafe and feel confined, rode at his chieftain's side. The wolf beneath him seemed to have an equal dislike of the heavy armor, and now and then turned his massive head to snap at Orgrim's leg, as if at some instinct that annoyed him. He also seemed to be laboring a bit as he bore his rider across the soft meadow grass, panting more than usual, pink tongue lolling. Orgrim muttered under his breath. It had sounded so simple. Go to war against this new insidious foe. But when they including Orgrim, stood and cheered the decision, no one had stopped to think of how difficult it would be to simply prepare. They would need to breed the wolves for size, even more now if the animals were to carry armor as well as orcs. Orc bodies, already heavy with dense bone and powerful muscle. The weapons were not untired. Several times already they had attacked the ogres, rationalizing that although they were lumbering and stupid, and the Draenei were quick and intelligent, fighting them was more akin to fighting the new enemy than killing Talbuk would be. They had lost a few at first who were burning on a pyre with due ceremony for their honorable sacrifice. The weapons felt alien in their hands. The armor slowed them down, but each time the attacks went more smoothly. The last time they had faced not only a pair of ogres, but one of their masters, the Grawn, who had the ferocity of the ogres it dominated and a vile cleverness that made it a much more challenging foe. Two brave Blackrock soldiers fell before Orgrim got in the final blow, swinging his hammer of prophecy to bring doom upon the bellowing Grawn. Blackhand stood beside him, panting and sweating blood, his own and that of the creature they had just slain splattered his face. He wiped his face with his mailed hand and licked the blood, grinning. 2 ogres and a master, he murmured, reaching out a hand to clap Orgrim on the shoulder. The pitiful Draenei do not stand a chance against our might. Standing, sweating in the sun, its bright light glinting off the metal plate and almost blinding his eyes, Orgrim agreed. Bloodlust rose high in him. He trusted Ner'zhul and the shaman of his clan. Further, he had spoken with Durotan, and they both agreed that, though they had been treated fairly by the Draenei on that long-ago day when they had been rescued by the Blueskins, there had been something particular about them. The spirits had never guided them falsely before. Why would they do so now? But as he rode alongside his lord to where a small hunting party had been reported, Orgrim had misgivings. What if the Draenei had been odd? Surely the orcs must have seemed odd to them when they first arrived. Was death truly an appropriate punishment for being different? When had there been a single attack on the orc by the Draenei? A single insult or offense, even? Now, 18 Blackrock warriors, armed to the teeth, their bodies coated in protective metal, were riding to slaughter a group of the Blueskins who were doing nothing more threatening than gathering food for their people. Unexpected and unwanted, an image rose in Orgrim's mind of the young Draenei girl who had smiled shyly at them. Was it her father or her mother who would die here on this glorious sunny day? "You look lost in thought, Orgrim," said Blackhand in his gravelly voice, startling Orgrim momentarily. "What fills your mind, my second?" The face of an orphan, thought Orgrim, but did not say. Instead, he said gruffly, "I wonder what color Draenei bleed." Blackhand threw back his oversized head and laughed heartily. Orgrim heard a harsh caw and the sound of frantic wing beats as the very crows took flight at the noise of Blackrock chieftain's laughter. "I will make sure your face is painted in it," Blackhand said, chuckling. Orgrim's jaw tightened, and he said nothing. The ancestors do not lie, he thought grimly. A child is innocent, always, but its parents have earned death. If they are plotting against us, as the spirits have said. They came upon them with ridiculous ease. Not bothering to hide their approach, the scouts had said the hunting party numbered 11, 6 males and 5 females, and they had encountered a herd of cleft hooves. While the great shaggy beasts were strong and difficult to bring down, they did not have the aggressiveness of a roused herd of tallbucks. And the Draenei hunting party had already managed to isolate a young bull. It roared, pawing the earth, and lowered its head, aiming its single horn at its attackers, but the outcome was assured. Or would have been, had it not been for the arrival of the orcs. Blackhand drew his company to a halt on the ridge. Orgrim could smell the excitement from his kinsmen, their bodies quivering with anticipation in their newly crafted armor, their hands clenched and unclenched, wanting to curl around the weapons that were only now becoming familiar. Blackhand held up a mailed fist, his small eyes fastened on the activity below, waiting for the right moment to swoop down like a hawk on a meadow rat. The Blackrock chieftain turned to his shaman, who were in the back. They too wore armor, but carried no weapons. They did not need to. They would heal the brethren as they fell, and also direct the immense power of the elements toward their foe. "Are you ready?" he asked. The eldest among them nodded. His eyes glowed fiercely, and his lips were curved in a smile. He too wanted to see the Draenei blood shed this day. Blackhand grunted and brought his fist down. The Blackrock warriors charged. They uttered their battle cries as they came, and the Blueskins turned, startled. At first, only surprise registered on their faces. No doubt they merely wondered why such a great number of mounted orc warriors were coming to aid them in the kill. It was only when Blackhand atop his monstrous wolf brought his two-handed broadsword down in a smooth blow that severed their leader in half, that the Draenei realized that the orcs had not come for the cleft hoof. but for them. To their credit, they did not stare in stunned horror at the sight, but sprang immediately into action. Voices that held only the faintest tremor of fear uttered words in a liquid-sounding alien tongue. Although Orgrim did not recognize the words, Durotan had the gift of recall for such things, not he. The sound was familiar. He knew what to expect from that long-ago day when the Draenei had rescued him in Durotan and had prepared his kinsmen. So when the sky crackled with unnatural blue and silver light, the shaman were ready. They blasted the strange bolts of lights with lightning of their own, the brightness almost blinding, and Orgrim looked down quickly, his focus on the Draenei warrior in front of him. Wielding a staff that glowed and sparkled, he roared and lifted the Doomhammer over his head and brought it crashing down upon his enemy. The armor the Draenei wore could not withstand such an attack and crumbled like thin tin bracelet. Blood and brains splattered the ground. Orgrim looked up, searching for his next target. Some of the black rocks were held in magical netting created by the Draenei's foul, unnatural lightning. They were proud and strong warriors, but they screamed in agony as the net burned its way into their skin. The acrid odor of burning flesh mixed with the reek of blood and fear in Orgrim's nostrils. It was an intoxicating smell. He felt a wind brush his face, chasing away the scent of battle and infusing his lungs with energy. Orgrim selected the one he would kill next, and raced towards the warrior. A female who had no weapon, but who was wreathed in pulsing blue energy. Orgrim grunted in surprise as the Doomhammer struck the field and bounced off, the shock shivering up the weapon into his arms, jarring him to the bone. One of the shamans stepped in, the crackling sound of lightning vying with the mysterious magical energies of the Draenei. Orgrim cheered as he saw the good natural lightning beat back the blue field. He swung again, and this time the Doomhammer crashed down on the blue-skinned skull most satisfactorily. It was all but over now. Only two remained standing, and in a heartbeat they had fallen beneath the mass of armored brown bodies. A few more shouts and grunts, and the unmistakable sound of bladed weapons sinking into the flesh, and then all was silent. The cornered cleft hoof had escaped. Orgrim caught his breath, his blood singing in his ears, aflame with the excitement of the kill. He had always enjoyed the hunts, but this... He had never expected anything like this. Sometimes the beasts he attacked fought back, but prey such as the Draenei, intelligent, powerful, who fought in the same way he did, and not with tooth and claw, was new to him. He threw back his head and laughed, and wondered if somehow he had become drunk on the sensation. The cheers and rough, deep bellows of laughter from the victorious orcs were the only sound in the glade. Blackhand stroked Orgrim and embraced him as best he could. Through the armor they both wore, I saw the Doomhammer. It was so fast it was only a blur in my eyes. The Blackrock chieftain rumbled, grinning. You fought well today, Orgrim. I was wise to name you my second. He stooped over the mage that had been Orgrim's last kill, removed his mail glove. The skull had been completely shattered. The blue blood was everywhere. Blackhand dipped his fingers in the slain Draenei's life fluid and carefully painted Orgrim's face with it. Deep inside, something shifted in the orc. He remembered doing this himself at his first kill. The blood red and warm. He remembered having done this to him when he went to the sacred mountain as part of the Orgrimmar ritual with his father's blood on his face. And now, his leader had anointed him again with the blood of the beings that were their enemy. A bit of dark blue liquid trickled down his cheek to the corner of his mouth. Orgrim extended his tongue, tasted the fluid, and found it sweet. The bloodhawk settled on its master's arm, its talons digging deep into the protective leather. Ner'zhul paced while the Hawkmaster unrolled the message and delivered it to him. Quickly, he scanned the small pieces of parchment. So easy. It had been so easy, not a single casualty, although some had been injured, of course. In the first foray, and the orcs had been completely victorious. Blackhand spoke contemptuously of how swiftly they had descended upon the party and broken their skulls. It was all unfolding as Rokan had promised. Surely now the being whom Rokan had allied would appear. The orcs, led by Ner'zhul, had certainly proven their worth to this decisive triumph. He read again the missive. Blackhand and the Blackrock orcs had indeed been the right choice to send against the Draenei. They were powerful and violent, but unlike the War Song or some other clans, they were completely under the control of their chieftain. That night, he had a victory feast prepared for the Shadowmoon clan. And they ate and drank and laughed and sung until at last Ner'zhul trundled into his bed and fell into a deep, profound sleep. And the being came. It was glorious, radiant, so bright that even with his vision eyes, Ner'zhul could not bear to look upon it at first. He fell to his knees, shaken with the joy and awe that washed through him. "You have come," he whispered, feeling tears well up in his eyes and slip down his face. "I knew that if we would please you, you would come." "I have indeed, Ner'zhul, shaman, soul tender of the orcs." The voice rumbled through his bones, and Ner'zhul closed his eyes, almost giddy at the sensation. "I have seen your masterful handling of your people, how you brought desperate clans together with a common purpose, a glorious goal. One that was inspired by you, Great One," murmured Ner'zhul. He thought of Rokan and briefly wondered why she was no longer appearing to him, then dismissed the thought of her. This great entity was far superior to even the shade of his beloved mates. Ner'zhul craved more words from this magnificent being. "You come to us and reveal the truth," Ner'zhul continued. "We did what was needed." "You did indeed, and I am well pleased with you. Glory and honor and sweet victory will come to be yours if you do as I say." "Of course I will, but, Great One," this humbled practitioner would beg a favor. Ner'zhul risked a glance up at the being. It was enormous, radiant and red, with a powerful torso and legs that ended in cloven hooves and curved backward like a Talbuk's or a Draenei's. Ner'zhul blinked. There was a silence for a moment after he voiced his request, and he thought he felt a sudden chill. Then the voice spoke again in his mind and in his ears. It was still smooth and sweet as honey. "Ask, and I will decide if you are worthy." Suddenly, Ner'zhul's mouth was dry, and the words would not form. With a great effort, he spoke. "Great One, do you have a name by which we may call you?" A chuckle rumbled through Ner'zhul's blood. "A simple favor, easily granted. I have a name. You may call me Kil'jaeden." Chapter 9. It is easy to understand why so many of my contemporaries prefer to let history die. Let it sink into oblivion, silently slipping beneath the waters of time until the surface of the lake is once again unruffled, and no one knows of the shame lurking in the depths. I, too, feel that shame. Though I was not alive when this occurred, I see it in Drekthar's face as he recounts his part of the tale in a shaking voice. I saw the weight of it on Orgrim Doomhammer. Grommash Hellscream. Friend and traitor and friend again was ravaged by it. But to pretend it did not exist is to forget how dreadful the impact was. To make ourselves into victims rather than claiming our participation in our own destruction. We choose this path, we orcs. We chose it right up until it was too late to turn back, and having made that choice once, we can, with the knowledge that we have of the end of that dark and shameful road, choose not to take it. So I wish to hear the testimony of those who placed one foot in front of the other on a road that spelled near obliteration for our kind. I want to understand why they took each step and what had to happen for it to seem logical and good and right. I want to know this so that when I see it unfolding again, I will recognize it. Humans have two sayings that are wise beyond imagination. The first is, those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it. The second is, know your enemy. Velen was deep in meditation when Restalong reluctantly approached him. He sat in the central courtyard of the Temple of Karabur, not on the comfortable benches that flanked the rectangular pool, but on the hard stone. The air was filled with the scent of flowing bushes of the lush garden, and the water murmuring softly as it circulated. Trees, their leaves moving in the wind, added their own quiet sounds. It was a tranquil scene, but Velen's attention was turned inward. Long had the Draenei and the Naru trusted one another. The luminous beings who so seldom opted to take solid form had been first caretakers of the exiled Eredar, then teachers, and then friends. They traveled together and beheld many worlds, each the time the Naru particularly the one calling itself Cure, had been instrumental in helping the Draenei flee. When the Minari uncovered their hiding place, and each time Kil'jaeden and the monstrous creatures had once been Eredar had come closer to capturing them, Velen grieved every time he and his people had to depart a world to save themselves, knowing that any beings left behind would be as changed as the Eredar had been. Kil'jaeden, always eager for more to join the Legion he was creating for his Dark Master Sargeras, would overlook no possible recruit. Cure, as sorrowful as Velen, grieved with him, but it spoke in Velen's mind with the unalterable logic that Kil'jaeden, Archimonde, and Sargeras would have destroyed another world in the same amount of time. All worlds, all beings, all races were horrifically equal in Sargeras' eyes. They all needed to be obliterated in a ghastly festival of carnage and fire. Velen's death at the hands of beings who had once been his dearest friends would save none of the luckless innocents, whereas his life possibly would one day. Oh, Velen had raged once. How is it life is more important and worthier than theirs? The gathering is slow, Cure had admitted, but it continues. There are other Naru like me who are reaching out to younger races. When they are ready, they will all be brought together. Sargeras will eventually fall beneath the will of those who yet believe in what is good and true and harmonious, what is the timeless balance of the universe. Velen had no choice but to either believe this being who had become his friend, or turn his back on those who had trusted him and be twisted into Minari. He chose to believe. Now, though, he was confused. The orcs had begun attacking lone hunting parties. There seemed to be no reason for the aggression. None of the shaken guards to whom Velen had spoken reported anything out of the ordinary, and yet 3 hunting parties had been killed, down to the last Draenei. Restallon, who had been investigating the slaughter, had reported that the bodies were not simply killed, they were butchered. So Velen had come to the temple, created in the earliest years of the Draenei on this world. Here, surrounded by 4 of the 7 Adamah crystals that had sprung into being so very long ago, he could hear the faint voice of his friend in his mind, but as yet Cure had no answers for him. There would be no flight for them this time, if things went wrong. Cure was dying, trapped in the very vessel that it had provided when it had crashed into this world 200 years past. "Great Prophet," said Restallon, his voice soft and weary sounding, "there has been another attack." Slowly, Velen opened his ancient eyes and regarded his friend sorrowfully. "I know," he said. "I felt it." Restallon ran a thick-fingered hand through his black hair. "What do we do? Each attack seems more violent than the last. Examination of the injuries done to the bodies seem to indicate that they are improving their weapons." Velen sighed deeply and shook his head. The white braid swung gently in the movement. "I cannot hear Cure," he said quietly. "At least not as well as I used to. I fear his time is not much longer." Restallon lowered his gaze, pain evident on his face. The Naro had effectively sacrificed itself for them. All the Draenei knew and understand this. Strange and mysterious as the being was, the Draenei had grown to care for it. It had been trapped and slowly dying for 2 centuries. Somehow, Velen had thought it would take longer than that for the being to die, if it did die, as he understood such things. He rose with purpose, his light tan robes fluttering behind him. It yet has wisdom to impart on me, but I have not the skill to hear in it any more. I must go to it. Perhaps proximity will help it communicate better." You mean to go to the sheep?" Restallon asked. Velen nodded. "I must." "Great Prophet, I do not mean to question your wisdom, but—" "You always do, anyways," Velen said, laughing, his startling blue eyes cracking at the corner with genuine good humor. "Continue, my old friend. The question always has value to me." Restallon sighed. "The Orcs have adopted the vessel as the sacred mountain," he said. "I know this," Velen replied. "Then why antagonize them by venturing there?" Restallon asked. "They would surely see this as an act of aggression at any time, particularly now. You would be giving them a reason to continue their attacks against us." Velen nodded. "I have thought of this, thought long and hard on it. Perhaps it is time to reveal who we are and what the sacred mountain is. They believe their ancestors dwell there, and they may very well be right. If Cure does not have much longer, should we not utilize its wisdom, its power while we can? If anyone or anything can broker peace between the Orcs and ourselves, this being, greater far than any of us, has the ability. This may be our only hope, Cure. Okay. Finding other races, other beings to join in on this quest for balance and harmony. To stand against Sargeras and this vast, unholy force he has created." Velen placed a white hand on his friend's armored-plated shoulder. "One thing is for certain, has been revealed to me in my meditations, and that is that things can no longer continue as they used to. Orc and Draenei can no longer live in distant familiarities with one another. There's no returning to that, my old friend. There's either war or peace. They will either become our allies or our enemies, and I would never forgive myself if I did not implore every avenue to peace that I could. Do you understand now? Rassilon searched Valen's face, unhappily, then nodded. Yes, I suppose I do, but I like it not. At least let me send you with an armored guard, for I know they will attack before they will listen. Valen shook his head. No weapons, nothing to provoke them. In their hearts they are honorable beings. I was able to glimpse the souls of 2 young orcs who stayed with us a few years ago. There is nothing cowardly or evil in there, only caution. And now, for some reason, fear. They attacked hunting parties, not civilians. Yes, Rassilon shot back. Parties that were greatly outnumbered. We found blood that was not our own spilled at these sites, Velen reminded him. They took the bodies back for ritual burning. But there was orcish blood, enough on the soil, and with our knowledge, a handful of Draenei can easily stand against many orcs. No. I will risk all on this. They will not slay me where I stand if I state my intentions honorably, and I come without the blatant ability to defend myself. I wish I had your confidence, my prophet, said Rassilon, resigningly, bowing deeply. I will assemble a small escort party then, and they will not be armed. The great Kil'jaeden began to visit Ner'zhul with more frequency. First, it was only in a dream state, as with the ancestors. He would come in the night while Ner'zhul slept deeply, his body heavy with the drug that opened his mind to Kil'jaeden's voice, and whisper his praise and congratulations and plans for further orc victory. Ner'zhul was an ecstasy. Each letter that arrived by Bloodhawk from various clans was reading with eagerness and delight. We came across 2 scouts far from aid, the Shattered Hand chieftain wrote. It was easy itself to dispatch them, outnumbered as they were. The Bleeding Hollow clan is proud to report to the great Ner'zhul that we have obeyed him in all things, said another letter. We have joined the Laughing Skull clan, more than doubling our armed warriors to send against the devious foe. It is our understanding that the Thunderlord clan seeks allies. We will send couriers them tomorrow. Yes, smiled Kil'jaeden. Do you see how they are coming together in a just cause? Before, these clans would be challenging one another if they crossed paths. Now they are sharing knowledge, sharing resources, working as one to overcome a foe who would see you all destroyed. Ner'zhul nodded, but he felt a sudden pang. It had been glorious to finally behold this beautiful, powerful entity, despite the fact that he looked so much like the hated Draenei, but he had stopped seeing Roken. He found he missed her. He wondered why she no longer seeking him out. Hesitantly, he spoke. Roken? Roken has done her part in bringing you to me, Ner'zhul, soothed Kil'jaeden. You know she is well and happy. You have seen her. We do not need her as an intermediary. Not now that I have been convinced of your worthiness to be my voice among your people. And as before, Ner'zhul's heart flooded with joy. But this time, despite the comforting and exciting words of Kil'jaeden, he felt a sad little jerk in his heart as it beat. and still wished he could speak with his mate. Ner'zhul was in deep thought when Gul'dan brought the missive to him. The apprentice bowed and handed his master a piece of parchment stiff with blue liquid. "What is this?" Ner'zhul asked, taking the parchment. "It was taken off a Draenei, approaching from the south," Gul'dan replied. "A party? A single courier. No arms, not even a mount. The fool was walking." Gul'dan's lips twisted into a smile as he chuckled. Ner'zhul looked down at the parchment, realizing now that the blue stains were the courier's blood. What had possessed the idiot walking alone, unarmed, into the heart of the Shadowmoon territory? He unfolded it carefully, trying not to tear it, and quickly began to read. Even as his brown eyes darted over the words, the room was suddenly filled with a radiance, and both shaman prostrated themselves. "Read it out loud, great Ner'zhul." "Come," came Kil'jaeden's smooth voice. "Share it with me and your loyal apprentice." "Yes, master," said Gul'dan eagerly. As he read it for the first time since he had spoken with his beloved Rokan, Ner'zhul tasted doubt. "Unto Ner'zhul, shaman of the Shadowmoon clan, the prophet Velen of the Draenei sends greetings. Recently, many of our people have come under attack from the Orcs. I do not understand why this is. For generations, your people and mine have lived in peace and tolerance, a state that has benefited us both. We have never lifted a weapon toward an Orc, and indeed, once we were instrumental in saving the lives of 2 young ones who unwittingly placed themselves in danger." "Ah," Gul'dan, "I remember. Durotan, who is currently the Frostwolf chieftain, and Orgrim Doomhammer." Ner'zhul nodded, absently, his thoughts distracted for a moment, then resumed reading. "We can only assume there is a terrible misunderstanding, and wish to speak with you so that there are no more lives, Orc or Draenei, are lost in such a tragic fashion. It's my understanding that the mountain you call Oshugon is sacred to your people. That is where the wise spirit of your ancestors dwell. Well, this place has long had deep meaning for the Draenei as well. We have always respected your decision to claim it as your holy site. However, the time has come for us to recognize that there is more that we share than divides us. I am called the prophet among my people, because at times I am granted wisdom and insight. I seek to lead well and peacefully, as I am sure you and the leaders of the various clans do your own people. Let us meet peacefully at the place that holds so much meaning for both of our races, on the 3rd day of the 5th month. I and a small party will be moving in pilgrimage to enter the heart of the mountain. No one in the small group will bear arms. I invite you and any others who feel so moved to join me as we enter the deep place of magic and power. And I ask the wisdom of the beings much wiser than we, how we can heal this rift between us. In light and blessing, I bring you peace." Gul'dan was the first to speak, or more accurately, to laugh. "Such arrogance, my lord. Great Kil'jaeden, this is an opportunity not to be missed. Their leader comes like a cleft-hoof calf to the slaughter, unarmed and stupidly, thinking that we know nothing of his evil intentions. And he thinks to violate Oshugon. He will die before he sets a vile blue hoof upon the root of our holy mountain." "What you say pleases me, Gul'dan," Kil'jaeden rumbled in that smooth-as-water voice. "Ner'zhul, your apprentice speaks wisdom." But Ner'zhul found words stuck in his throat. He opened his mouth twice to speak, and finally words rasped forth on the 3rd attempt. "I do not disagree that the Draenei are dangerous," he said haltingly. "But We are not grown to kill unarmed forces. The courier was slain, Gul'dan pointed out. He was unarmed and even unmounted. And I regret that, Ner'zhul snapped. He should have been taken into custody and brought to me at once, not killed! Kil'jaeden said nothing. Scarlet radiance bathed Ner'zhul as he continued, groping his way into a solution. He will not be permitted to defile our sacred place, the shaman continued. Have no worries about that, Gul'dan. But I will not have him killed without having a chance to speak to him. Who knows? But that we might learn something. Yes, said Kil'jaeden, his voice rich and warm. When one is in pain, one will reveal all he knows. His words startled Ner'zhul, but he did not reveal his surprise. This magnificent being wanted him to torture Velen. Something inside him was excited at the prospect, but something else inside him recoiled. Not yet. He would not do such a thing yet. We will be waiting for him, he assured both his great lord and his apprentice. He will not escape. Lord, said Gul'dan slowly. A suggestion, if I may. What is it? The closest clan to the mountain is the Frostwolf clan, Gul'dan pointed out. Let's have them take Velen and his party and bring them to us. The leader once tasted Draenei hospitality, and although he has not hindered our efforts, I do not recall hearing that he has led any attacks against the Draenei. We shall kill two birds with one stone. Take the Draenei leader captive and make Duratana the Frostwolf prove his loyalty to our cause. Ner'zhul felt two pairs of eyes boring into his. The small, dark ones of his apprentice and the glowing orbs of his master Kil'jaeden. What Gul'dan had suggested sounded like wisdom. Then why was Ner'zhul so reluctant to agree? The heartbeats ticked away, and preservation shouted on Ner'zhul's low brow. Finally he spoke, and was relieved to hear his voice sounded sure and strong. Agreed. It is a good plan. Find me pen and parchment, and I shall notify Duratan of his duty.